Can I also advise that the filming or videoing of taking photographs during proceedings is now permitted. However, I would advise that the use of flash photography is not. If you are wishing to record as well, please be mindful of data protection issues insofar as you may only video the committee itself. Thank you.
Any declarations of interest? No.
Chair, Fraser Honors, the Liverpool City Council highways and the Liverpool Club season ticket holder.
Any other?
Chair, Fergus Mathal, Liverpool City Council, Planning Department, and City Holder.
Anybody else? No?
Season ticket holder, Everton.
Why is that relevant?
We will consider its relevance insofar as it relates to the football club's daily activity in that area of the city.
Okay.
Before we go further, Chair, just to confirm apologies from Councillors Richard Kemp, Eddie Todd and Eileen Ray. There were no further apologies to report. Now therefore come to our first and main item of business, having undertaken a site visit this morning to Liverpool Football Club Anfield Stadium on Anfield Road, Liverpool 4, located in Anfield Ward. For those of you on the agenda, the report on this application will be found on pages 1 to 89.
Right, so the applicant first. Sunlight. Jeremy Fisher and Peter Smith. These all going to speak?
Yes.
Alright. So, we're going to do something.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We're just going to give a presentation of the scheme, so hopefully we get a little bit of better understanding of it for you. So I'll do an introduction. Sorry. Okay, I'll do an introduction and then Jeremy Fisher will go into the details of the building. He's going to talk about the landscaping, and I'll just give a very brief overview of the transport as well. We have our team here for any technical questions that to answer us. So, very briefly, if I just start in terms of the planning issues associated with the application. This application is for the expansion of both the main stand, which is phase 1 development, and the Anfield Road stand, phase 2 of the football club, which will increase the overall capacity of the club from 45,000 to 58,500 approximately. The first phase of development is subject to an application for full planning permission, and we're including details of the expansive public open space in this application to the west and south of the stadium. 20-month construction programme. The target opening date of August 2016. The Anfield Road stand expansion is subject to an outline planning permission, which shows the scale and mass of development at this stage. Details of the design will follow in due course. In very brief terms, in terms of the planning policies, planning issues related to the application, they're all very detailed and covered in the officer's report, but I just want to highlight the following. The adopted UDP contains a specific policy that aims to facilitate the growth and development of both Liverpool and Everton football clubs. There is specific support for the expansion of the Anfield Stadium set out in various sport policy documents that have been prepared by the Council, including the recently adopted Anfield Spatial Regeneration Framework. There is therefore a general in-principle development plan and other policy support for the development. This does, however, need to be considered in the context of the impact on amenity and other policies for the development. In terms of residential amenity, the proposed development will have an impact on the amenities of people living in proximity to the stadium and the wider area. An environmental statement has been submitted which addresses all the development issues and potential effects. It predicts a combination of positive and negative impacts on residential amenities of adjacent occupiers. Following appropriate mitigation to either the construction or operational phase of development, the permanent discernible significant adverse impacts are predicted. And this is agreed by the technical authorities of the application. In terms of heritage, planning permission, as most already know, exists for the construction of a new 60,000 capacity stadium in Stanley Park. That development would have a major direct impact on the setting and significance of the heritage landscape in Stanley Park, including the adjacent Anfield Cemetery. The expansion of the existing Anfield Stadium would result in less than substantial harm to the significance of those heritage assets. And English heritage confirms that the harm would be less than the approved stadium, whilst also offering benefits to secure the completion and sustain the generation of the park itself. Any harm to the park is outweighed by this significant regenerative and overall public benefits to the stadium expansion. In terms of regeneration, that's obviously one of the overriding objectives of the City Council. The expanding stadium will deliver direct local regeneration benefits in terms of new jobs and wealth creation. There are around 40 full-time, 550 part-time jobs created as a result of the expanded stadium, in addition to construction jobs and new visitor spending and increased benefits to the economy of the city. There will be widening of recreational opportunities in the area and significant improvements to the physical environment in and around Anfield. That's the overview. That's the general overview of planning issues. I'll come back to transport in a short while, but before I do so, my colleagues will go through the design of the stadium and landscape proposals. I'll hand over to Sharon Fisher.
Jeremy Fisher, Director of KSS Group Architects. The proposed expansion for Anfield effectively provides 8,500 new seats in phase 1, main stand, and a further 4,800 seats in phase 2, which would take, at the end of phase 2, the overall stadium capacity up to 58,500. It's currently 45,500, so it's 13,300 additional seats in 2 phases. The application also focuses primarily on the main stand, first phase, and we have a design which, I'll just check which. There's a little bit of context, I know you've been up there earlier this morning. So, from this aerial perspective, we have the existing Anfield Stadium in the middle of the view, Stanley Park to the top left, the matchday parking area to Stanley Park, just to the north behind Anfield West Stand, Waterbury Road running along behind the Cop to the south, and then Allroy Road, which will become a new boundary line effectively to the west behind the expanded main stand. So looking at the aerial view here, the expansion is based on the stand-by-stand basis. The owners are very keen to maintain the look of Anfield as a 4-stand configuration. We have the expanded main stand will be considerably bigger and taller than the existing stand. About 140 metres long, 65 metres deep, and 45 metres high, as high as the roof of the rear. And it's in a traditional configuration which we think sits well with the existing architecture at Anfield. The materials for the external envelope are generally traditional. We have a dark red brick base and red brick circulation cores at each end, red brick vertical supports expressed on the outside, which support the upper concourse cladding in the red band at the top there, and we're using the club colours in the cladding to emphasise entrances to particular functions in the stand. So we think it's appropriate and in keeping. The massive shaping of the stand that uses the language of displays and angles, which are forms that were historically used at Anfield in times past, and they, as the stand is will be one of the largest in the country. We're using displayed walls and roof profiles at each end to lower the scale where it can use to expand the stand across the existing stand. We also have, in order to break the scale with Hallroyd Road to the northwest boundary, we have a podium level which is roughly two-storey as well, and that helps to break up the overall mass of the stand, and also helps separate out the lower and the upper tier general admission spectators. So here's some further views from the southwest plaza here, again showing the materials that just described. Hoping that the southwest plaza will be an exciting space to be on match day. And here's a view of the interior from the pitch side, looking towards the expanded stand. So the lower tier that you can see there is effectively the existing main stand seating minus about 5 rows. And then there's a new middle tier predominantly for hospitality, and an upper tier of about 8,000 seats for general admission. So as you can see, it's completely different from the top and the big structure in its own right. The rest of these slides are pretty much sort of a variety of reviews as an view here. And this is a typical section which shows how it shows the existing lower tier to the left, and then two new tiers above it. The height of the stand is fixed either right to right from the residential buildings on Hallroyd Road to the right hand of the unit. There's technical drawings of the use of the stand itself. Thank you.
Morning, Chair, members. I'm Christopher Ahmed. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm going to talk to you about the public spaces that form as a result of the stadium expansion. This is the overall plan to the stadium in the context of completed standing park. And I think it's important to say today that this is as much about grounding the stadium within the community as it is about making it work on match days. So that's always been the goal from the very beginning. The project, again, the other point is that the intention is to try and pull the park onto Walbreath Road. No area within this morning that there's very little connection between the two, and there's a great opportunity to make that better than it ever has been, really. And also to create a series of spaces which I'm moving on to in a moment. You've all seen from those going to the top of the roof the scale of some of the opportunities that we have here, and one of the tasks of the design team is how we create variety. This is really just for information purposes. I know that your officers explained this morning that the Anfield Road stand is before you in outline only, and I think the key thing here is just to show that what will be improvements between the stadium and Stanley Park will be much more and further improved as and when the second stage comes forward. This is the key slide, really, and what I'll spend a little bit of time on. I'm going to talk to you very quickly about those 7 highlights that are on the screen there. I think the key points to bear in mind are that not just about this variety of scale, but also variety of friction means there are some places you'll want to stay in, and there are some places you'll want to get through quite quickly. Whether you go to match, whether you're there on a weekday, or you're with a tour, or you're with a school tour. And it's important to appreciate the scale. This scheme will deliver an additional 1.6 hectares of public open space on top of the completion of Stanley Park. There are some quite sizable dimensions that I'll go through in turn as we work through. And so bringing up the first character area, again, knows to see the relationship between Alway Road and say this is what we call the linear road. It runs from the park to Walker Road. It's an important linking and an important separating space. So it links the park and Walker Road, but also separates the stadium from the residents of Alway Road, privacy, and a bit of room space. It's between 30 and 40 metres wide and over 250 metres long. So that had massive scale. And of the 125 trees that will be planted as a result of the project, 3/4 are in this portion of the scheme. And as we said earlier, it's a mixture of quick moving spaces for fans, but also slow moving growing spaces. Which brings me nicely onto this next slide, the area we call the garden, which will accommodate Hills Memorial. You don't need me to tell you how important it is to deal with this as a component within the whole, but also to celebrate as well as to commemorate. We've had very close and ongoing dialogue with the families, with the fans, with ex-players, facilitated by our local artists, extremely broadband, who might have been very prevalent throughout the city. And this is about playing with space and scale, so whilst we need to deal with large numbers of passing fans on match days, we're also more than aware that we need places of intimacy, particularly for families and those wishing to pay their respects, to reflect, and if you like, step off the hard movement. This plan, or this CGI really attempts to begin to explain that. The idea is that it's accommodated within the fabric of the stadium, and it is given a great prominence, but also doesn't get compromised by commitments of thousands of fans on match day. As we move towards the park, and you look at what's in front of you is the area you look to see as the current car park on Anfield Road. This morning, one of the things that you see from say the European Match today, the need for an outside broadcast area. So this is a multifunctional space, but it's also the area where all the things happen that happen. This is the closest possible point to the stadium drop off. To the stadium, much closer than to the presence, to the provision of disabled parking coming at its top end, and there's also a new fan zone towards the corner of Oakley Avenue, Argos Lane, which is linked to the centre of the stadium. And then to pull it back together, I know that various people remarked on size and scale this morning. This is the area we call Anfield Square. Accommodated within it is the existing Albert Pub, very much monumental in scale, but it's important to break that up into a variety of subspaces. So there are opportunities we're exploring here for relocating very important elements of the club and the community's history, looking at the shape of the gates and statues, but also working with the floor, with the fabric to look at a much smaller scale. You can probably realise that there's a scarf motif that runs all the way across that area over the top of the podium and back down. So it's a linking element, but it's also an element to be able to ground history of the club, history of the neighbourhood, to try and bring all those things together. It's 4,500 square metres, it's 2/3 the size of the club. So it's massive. And from that, it's vital that it's used for multiple things, not just for football. So it needs to be used for match and non-match days, for flexible, for adaptive uses, for markets, for community gatherings, for everything.
So just very briefly talking about transport strategy as well. The members will also be aware that all the planning commission for the new stadium in Stanley Park, that wanted an expansion of the area for the parking zone in the area, so this is approximately 5 kilometres radius from the stadium to the line. And that the recent access surveys that have been carried out in support of the current application that the plans attending matches demonstrate the success of the NFZ in actually discouraging from attending matches with the car. There's been a significant reduction in numbers who actually come to the stadium by car. And as a consequence, there's been less traffic congestion and just sort of indiscriminate car parking in the area. The transport strategy that's now proposed as part of the stadium expansion actually aims to build upon this, and it's got two principal aspects to it. The first is the continued management and redistribution of spectator parking away from the stadium. And the second is to improve accessibility for non-car modes. And there are a number of aspects to this. In the first instance, there will be some formalised road closures during match day time, during match day, on Anfield Road and Walton Road. But local residents will be provided with passes so that they can still access their houses during that time. So there will be special passes to get into the area. The club will manage all of the car parking which is within the locality. At present, we're told that it's actually actively managed by the club, and that means actually come to the match on an ad hoc basis, drive to the area and try and get into car parking spaces. So that actually increases the level of congestion and traffic in the area. In the future, all of those car parking spaces within the area will be pre-allocated by the club. There will be no speculative car parking, and this will be very much advertised on the club's website. And people attending the match will very much discouraged from coming into the area because they won't find any parking. There will be rerouting of service buses, and that's been already agreed with the bus companies, and they will use Great Road, Watson Street, still, during match time while Great Road is closed. There will be an enhanced express bus service to from the city centre. There's lots of plans to actually start finish their days in the city centre now using public transport to from Live Street and staying in hotels in the city. Again, that's something that's come out of our recent access strategy studies. There will be a drop-off and pick-up area specifically for Watson Street. There will be an enhanced cycle service to Sandhill, so some of that shows instead. Facilities will also be provided for taxi or drop-off service. That's a new service that's being planned to do from the city centre out to the match. And there will be new taxi drop-off and pick-up areas provided on Sleepers Hill, Oakfield Road, and Arthur's Lane. And all that will be put in the transport strategy and transport working group that will be agreed between the various transport providers, the City Council, and representatives of the football club. That's it in terms of our running through the application. I'll just go back to one of the images for us to do that.
Everything?
Yes.
Okay, so when I remember this time, please,
Yes.
want to ask any questions? Thanks, Steve. And
Can I just make a general comment? Whilst I oppose the previous application as intruding on Stanley Park, I'm pleased to look at a fresh scenario. Can I just ask, on page 32 of the report, council officers provided, there is a comment that Anfield and Walton started seeing the higher rates of pollution from car emissions as a result of thousands of cars coming to the area match days. Now, I think the comments I'm getting is what I fear is our naive assertion that providing X thousand extra capacity won't generate some more car usage. And I'm truly trying to clinically rationalise that. And also on page 48, on the third paragraph, Mercy travelled detailed comments related to the application and are supportive in principle, but understanding that key transport commitments contained within the application are doable. They do question the fact there's zero growth target for scheduled bus services. So, on one hand, in the verbal contribution I've heard, we're talking about increasing some services, but in the report, Mercy Travel seems to be under the impression there's a zero target. What's the right script?
is anybody?
Yes.
Does that divergence worries me?
We do have our transport scheme, I think it's probably the best
Yeah,
person
yeah.
to answer that question.
Sorry.
Okay,
can you hear me okay?
Can you ask them to come down, please?
Yes, Tim.
Can you come down the front, please? Yes, sir.
Okay, Dave Rory from McDonald from the transport side. Just in terms of the question regarding the diversion routes and the scheduled buses, we work very closely with the Measure Travel and also the operators themselves. And initially, we're looking at increasing scheduled buses, but we're concerned over how those scheduled buses will be sort of managed and serviced through the area, and their sort of aspiration to more special services. As we increase in the use of more to the city centre, especially which rather than putting more drivers onto scheduled services through the walls of Breck Road, because obviously we are looking to close the formalised wall of Breck Road project through diversion routes. Diversion routes to actually, they have track them, they have driven these diversion routes, we've got for sort of tracking in terms of vehicles on junction, so they do work, they have been tested, and the increase will be sort of the city centre as probably a lot of surveys that we've resulted in certain previous especially with a lot of moves on the city centre as a main hub, and that's what sort of strategy in terms of consultants toward in terms of moving people to and from the city centre.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm just looking, I heard lots of words, but I didn't actually hear a clear commitment. I presume Mersey Travel knows something about travel arrangements. Mersey Travel said in section 8.310, their comment is they're concerned about a zero growth target for scheduled bus services. So is someone saying this report's been overtaken by extra scheduling, which I've been encouraged to hear, or it isn't? I just hate to presume that Mersey Travel do know something about transport.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been working with Measure Travel in particular, Stagecoach Marine. The bus services on the sort of routes of the area for the general passengers, not so much the match goers. They're concerned, obviously, if they put too much on there, they're congestion with the current passengers, and rather than sort of overloading already congested buses to get them onto special buses because the service results that they are going to and from the city centre. But with all this, the transport working group meeting will review and constantly monitor how this works anyway.
Chairman, I may on that point, on paragraph 8.310, it refers to the proposed operation of a transport strategy working group. And I do accept transport is something that you learn as you go, actually monitoring is probably the strategy. What provision is there for residents' representation rather than just operators' representation?
That particular group, I mean, the details of that, it's mainly, it's sort of a composition of mainly is going to be the operators, but the residents have, the Liverpool Council going to be in dialogue with the residents, and the residents got to use it as a way of communicating that through. We have, through the consultation, through the transport strategy, we've spoken directly with the residents, and the main concerns were access to road closures, and we are looking at a way to mitigate against their concerns by reducing bespoke passes. I think the sort of the operators, Measure Travel, that were more concerned about currently the road closure gets closed sort of not in real time, and they want to put some more informed information out to the general public about when those road closures will be put in place. Hence, one Breck Road, we're looking to close that same Anfield Road area 2 hours prior to kick-off with an agreed diversion route, which will be fully notified.
On transport, Mr. Chairman, under previous considerations, and I do accept that the capacity increase is in the order of 80,000 being looked at today in the schedule. That would bring a lot of additional people in, but during the site visit we were kindly guided some idea that there is the potential to land up to 30,000 people could be accommodated in Anfield if the accommodation was there. So in the long run, what is the key route of increasing the capacity of transport? For instance, in the previous considerations, we've had discussions about Liverpool branch being reopened for rail linkage. Is the rail network well involved in the transport linkage? Because if we're going to have 8,000 more people here, is there any demographic of where that 8,000 come from? From your own market research, is it local people, is it from the northwest, is it international travellers? What demographic research have you done about your increased expected capacity? Where are they going to be coming from? Will affect how we're going to get there and how we can accommodate them getting there with the least disruption for everyone's benefit.
Through the whole process, I think what's been important to note since the 2008 sort of information on the access social field and the survey we've done there, since the FMP said, since we talked through the control that we put in, there has been a significant change in reduction in power use anyway. What's happened over the last, say, number of years, commercially, the operators have been introducing their own sort of services such as an icon service based for operating because there's a commercial demand to move people to and from the city centre. Equally, it's been an alarming sort of move towards taxis in the last sort of couple of years, again, moving towards city centre. And I think when we're doing most of the surveys and the face-to-face travel surveys with people, there's an awful lot of people actually do use the city centre as that sort of main target, that main hub. Hence why the strategy is sort of targeted toward moving people to and from that. Commercially, again, operators north and to the east, there's not a commercial market for it currently, and hence why they're sort of looking at those sort of services, such as moving more people by bus and by taxi to and from the main hub of the city centre. That's why the strategy has been targeted around there.
In previous documentation, we did have reference to potential park and ride schemes. I know that you were talking about some of the parking space being controlled by the club, reallocated. But for instance, I know on Anfield Park, there's some parking there, but installed outside that jurisdiction. There's other ad hoc car parks that have risen, where we but is there any strategy? So I know in the previous documentation you were looking at possibly doing the park and ride from Petrol Station, park and ride further. Is there any provision of the park and ride utilising the rail network more efficiently to get passengers into the city with less construction?
We're not proposing sort of park and ride to Kirkdale and Sandhills per se, although we are encouraging more park and walk. From so Kirkdale and Sandhills are sort of routes, because obviously the rail network is an area of growth, and with the stop and bus and the routes, the walking routes to and from Sandhills and Kirkdale are areas that have been targeted and promoting, but not actually actively encouraging more car parking into the area. But I can't stress enough the city centre, there's a long amount of people who do move to and from the city centre. You've got potentially it is a sort of like a park and ride size book, and the use of people in terms of demographics of where fans come from, it's quite remarkable. From a lot coming from abroad, staying in hotels the weekend, the hotels for the weekend, it's for more than a period. There's capacity, and hence with the transport operators that are picking up on that sort of market to move to and from, and enhancing that service. It's already in operation, it's been in operation since 2008, but we're going to enhance that even further.
It does, and last question, actually, you're saying that the capacity of fans using the centre has grown, and that was stated during the visit in a quite positive way. But do we have any demographic breakdown of the 8,000 extra users you're expecting to use the extra facilities, where they will come from and how they will come from? Is that, because I can't see that in the documentation here, has anybody profiled that? Because I imagine as a business case you would need to.
Yeah, in the initial sort of when we've done the research face-to-face surveys where people come from, now obviously we've used that as a sort of 2013 baseline, and we sort of factored that in into the sort of phase 1 development, phase 2, and that's where sort of the targets are coming from in terms of how people will travel in the future by and how the current travel is impacting in the future.
Is that documented for committee members to look at?
It's all the details embedded within the transport session notes. It's quite a document for the details are in there.
Can we have that shared for the, because it's in the report shared for them?
Hard copy of the document that we can. Yeah.
Yes, that's what Martin would.
Sure. Any other questions? Is there any other questions? Alan?
It's related to parking, Chair. Whilst you're looking at the immediate area around Anfield, there's close proximity to Everton, and there is an issue with matchday parking on Liverpool games in that area, particularly Cherry Lane area, Courtal, where there is very little residence parking, and there are huge issues currently. So perhaps we may need to look at the wider issue of parking.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the FMPs there. There's areas where certainly we're in discussion with the city council and the Hayward Street area, which we're looking to talk to review that. In terms of all of the surveys, we have found the FMPs there is working very well. Obviously, there are, it does obviously go beyond that to a point where it's not causing any particular problem that we're aware of, and we're in, obviously taking our own surveys outside that area, and we're aware sort of issues been raised, just looking at the Drive area, that area, but that's more like city games on, it's not actually on more sort of home games, so we are looking at reviewing parts of FMPs in the Hayward Street area, and potentially expand to that.
Any other questions? Is there any other questions on the presentation? Oh, you want to raise anything? We have a number of objections. Bill McGarry. Will you come down, please?
I'm Bill Gary, resident at Anfield Forum. There's no doubting that over the past 50 years, the players and coaching staff of Liverpool Football Club have cultivated Anfield to become famous throughout the world, as well as giving many hours of enjoyment to fans both in the city and elsewhere in the British Isles. In the earlier part of this 50-year period, the players, coaches, staff and directors of the club maintained a close relationship with local residents and visitors, and in return, many local people attended matches and helped to establish the tradition of die-hard support for the team and world-famous anthems that drove the players on to be consistent high achievers. However, since the advent of the Premier League and lucrative TV contracts, the operations of the club have increasingly been aimed at being high achievers on the stock market at the expense of the famous Googling mentality, investment in local playing talent, or consideration for the local working class fans of the community. With the ever-increasing need to match the multi-millionaire owners of today's high-achieving clubs, the redevelopment of the stadium, which is the subject of this planning application, has become essential, and successive owners have pursued policies to bring it about, which calls them to ride roughshod over local residents, and to some extent even the council. Inevitably, this redevelopment will go ahead as all obstacles have been removed by Birmingham or Fowl, and the council have no choice but to accede if they are to restore any vestige of community or respect to the once thriving area, which has been left to rot and disintegrate due to the neglect and ruthlessness of those individuals and groups who have gradually engineered its decline. However, our forum membership also includes local hotels as well, across Anfield Road, whose businesses will be seriously impacted by the proposed closure of part of Anfield Road, which is the Homes Application Site, Phase 2. The closure of part of Anfield Road will obviously prohibit the through traffic which are ordinarily passed by the local hoteliers, and which will therefore result in less passing traffic and pedestrians and visitors to that area and currently the situation. The results of which will therefore be less visitors using the area, and that therefore less income being generated. At phase 2, the intentions are to extend Anfield Road and across Anfield Road, plus closing off Anfield Road permanently to vehicular traffic between Stage Road and our Road. This is a busy thoroughfare, especially during rush hour weekdays, and its closure would potentially lead to increased traffic on the already overstretched capacity of Wattenbrook Road, or perhaps Priory Road. The closure of Anfield Road would also have, therefore, results in loss of access and therefore impact on local businesses. Policy TRM2 indicates that the council will open a new development or change of use where we demonstrate that the transport infrastructure can accommodate it or to be adapted to do so without creating congestion and hazard on the road network. However, there has been, as far as we're concerned, there has been adequate consideration given to car increase predictions relevant to phase 2 and car parking future requirements, which is also detailed in the previous solutions. It is worth noting also that should CPO powers have been used to acquire road properties, then this would primarily have to be done under the consideration that such CPOs would be required in order to facilitate economic delivery for the area. We would argue similarly, therefore, the hotels in Anfield Road are equally an economic driver, and the market contract would be mitigated with the stopping of Anfield Road as a proposal in phase 2. Obviously, there's consequences to multi-power effects of economic delivery. Policy C7 of the UDP, with its emphasis on football ground, indicates its aims to maintain and enhance the immunity of local residents living within the locality. The UDP also indicates its objective that the council will therefore encourage and support community involvement in the formulation of plans and proposals for the development and expansion of football clubs. Both of the detailed and outlined planning applications, together with the various impact studies, are complex, and we have earlier pointed out that the forum has had not enough time to consider all the integrated aspects, which in many ways have required expert technical knowledge to make the detailed response that we would have wished. We do hope, therefore, that should this happen in other parts of the country, that central government should take account of this rather unbalanced situation. We've also put forward our interest in acquiring funding for some kind of community legacy for the area. Obviously, there's no CIL schedule operating in Liverpool to apportion funding that could be acquired for neighbourhood plan purposes. Section 106 seems to have been substantially planned for already in terms of infrastructure development. So our contention is we are still looking for some satisfaction for some neighbourhood legacy given what's happened over all these years. Finally, with this in mind, while we in the Anfield Neighbourhood Forum accept the redevelopment plans, we feel it must be incumbent on the council to ensure that Liverpool FC are obliged to incorporate some considerable financial and practical reparations to the community to compensate the years of misery, financial loss and disrespect which these policies have culminated in. Thank you. I just think it's a question as well for both sides of the debate. I've just received cold drop Liverpool Football Club stadium expansion. The may not see the document, which is a particular issue pertinent to the football club is the lack of a train station in close proximity to direct service stadium from residents of Anfield. 6 options were considered by Network Rail to address the issue. The results of the study suggest infrastructure needs changes to be not just vital but benefits expected to be generated. Unfortunately, the 3 existing stations in the vicinity, Sandfields, Kirkdown and Backfield, are well used by supporters. Is there any comments from the objections point of view about public rail and public transport, and is this a document you've had an opportunity to view?
No, it's fine.
Is there any comments from your group you'd like to make about the transport proposals?
Well, in as much as there are observations made, an additional 600 car parking spaces are here available. With this regard is questionable. It's simply the fact that LFC are going to take control of car parking spaces at the former Anfield Comprehensive School, which would previously afford 800 car parking spaces.
So in effect, there are 200 less car parking spaces available, due to the plans presumed ongoing for the University Technical College route. And also, with respect to that loss, this community, the car parking there is subject to monies required for the community, which apparently is supposed to be now administered by CIC going through various administrative changes. So we're looking for anything that would be commensurate with a loss in funding from there, which is supposed to be provided for the community to be somehow compensated for again. So again, we've not had the time or really the ability to go through the detailed technical reports in order to evaluate all these issues regarding transport and the infrastructure which you described. Certainly have time to do that or be informed of those proposals which you just spoken of. And also with regard to the intentions for the closure of Anfield Road, this obviously will result in permanent closures of the track between Skerries and Malwood Road. And as we've spoken of, this is a very busy thoroughfare, especially during rush hour weekdays, and this closure potentially due to increased traffic, etc., on Walker Road and Crowley Road. So we don't think that's been given full consideration of. We don't think just the infrastructure, the relationship to housing developments and perhaps even links to new trade stations and overcome those obstacles which wasn't very obvious in communication before. Albeit in detailed traffic impacts for these, we still don't think that they are detailed enough. With our overview, anyway, to adequately explain, particularly all the extra car parking requirements that will ensue from the increased traffic base to go through those aspects and adequately to how those intrusions are possible to 4,000 will be adequately paid for. So there's a number of things which we don't think are being adequately addressed, even in the detailed traffic impacts for these.
Thanks very much. Patrick Tobin.
Mr. McIntosh, with regard to last week there, what I'd say is that I've already timed myself, Mr. McIntosh, 6 minutes, if that's okay, Mr. McIntosh. I've timed myself 6 minutes in my rehearsal. With regard to last speaker, what I would like to point out, copies available to all the community, our forum should allow hard work to constitute, to get finally validated by the Liverpool Council. So three letters to the Trump asking them to consider putting a 1 month cap between the two applications that are presenting you today. I think everybody would agree that phase 1 is complex enough without putting in the outline plan for phase 2 on the same day to make it even more complex for a simple community such as ours. It will never reply to any level. Copies available to the community. My name is Patrick Duggan. I'm speaking as a local hotelier and restaurateur in the area of the plan application. I've operated my business there since December 2006. I came here to move into what I thought was an area experiencing substantial regeneration, and which offered an opportunity for our business to grow and thrive into the future. However, what has ensued is a position whereby the various agencies responsible for integrating regeneration policy and an actual regeneration program have acted in a less than desirable joint fashion. When in fact we have been subjected to is endless year-on-year of intransigence, whilst we waited for the LFC-led regeneration after years of deliberating, delaying, destabilising, and dereguling, with the subsequent evaluation of the area, which has resulted in the obvious blight that your committee will have seen today, in which very few self-recruited people even visit. All of this without even the common courtesy or proper consultation with his neighbours. Ever. The number of words of the dialogue between LFC and community in the last 10 years would be on one side of a sheet of paper. It's therefore worthy of some celebration that we have at last come to a unique position that work has actually begun to be carried out after the long promised regeneration, which is the subject of the current LSC application. It is therefore incumbent on me to actually praise Lord Mayor Anderson for his pragmatic approach and to realise some form of solution to the area after all these years. I have consistently praised Mayor Anderson on this point and many other points. Indeed, I think there's only someone with his moral authority that could actually have had any deal done with this greedy organisation. I might remind you of Peter Kilfoyle, the resigned MP, called the organisation venal in its treatment in the community. However, as a local hotelier, my business will be seriously impacted by the closure of part of Anfield Road, which is the current application site for the out-time planning permission today, known as Phase 2. Anfield Road is a busy road providing access across the area and to the roads off Anfield Road. The closure of part of Anfield Road to suit the requirements of the major development will obviously prohibit the through traffic which would have ordinarily passed by the local hoteliers and restaurants, including mine. It will therefore result in less passing traffic, pedestrians and visitors in an area in here than is currently the situation. When I bought the property, it was for its ex-time tourist potential as a heritage type facility on a prominent and easily accessible road. The intention was and is to provide such a tourist attraction, attracting people's culture tourists to the area. If we were to stop into Anfield Road, then as an investor in the area, at the very least, I would expect the council to consider some adequate signage to my business and others, permanent in nature and not at the discretion of the club, who we have very little trust in. This is a reasonable request since it will direct tourists to the hotelier trade who, like LFC, albeit SMEs, should also be considered as valuable economic drivers. Indeed, I would also expect adequate arrangements for additional parking somehow to be made available. So, like the football, we would be able to enjoy additional parking facilities for those who would be able to enjoy access to local businesses, like LFC enjoys. But bear in mind that if people are coming from the Argos pub to my premises, they'll have to stop their car because they won't be able to come, so they'll have to park somewhere 100 yards away from me. As a licensed hotelier, I'm reliant on customers using my hotel to purchase drinks and food. It was always my intention to further my investment as a restaurateur and licensed 7 days a week for that purpose. I've also invested heavily in my hotel as a heritage hotel, despite having to contend with an extra 8 years of deliberate lighting. In conclusion, there's one page after this slide. In conclusion, therefore, may indeed be some reasons for the closing of the road for the benefits of this major development. However, I hope I have shown that there are more significant reasons for the benefit of other economic and employment creating local businesses as to why this road should not be closed. Businesses who have shown a long-term commitment to the area and whose loyalty through many years of blight beyond their powers and control should now be recognised and compensated by retaining at very least this very important thoroughfare. I'm 80% through this matter, 80% through. I'm going to read a letter that I have in 2011 from Mayor Joe Anderson, which at the time gave me great source of hope and joy. It's from Simon Joe Anderson, copies available to our committee. Your considerable efforts to realise a statue to commemorate the life of Brian Epstein has been brought to my attention by Councillor Winnie Simon. I'm pleased to hear that you are keen that such a commemoration fits comfortably within the city's plans to regenerate the North Liverpool area, and that you would like the Council to support your proposal to fund and locate the statue in the gardens of number 57 Anfield Road. That's the hotel this time. I understand that number 37 is trading at the Epstein Hotel and that the proprietor, Mr. Patrick Duggan, has assembled a good collection of Epstein memorabilia on the basis that this was the home of Epstein's family and he spent many a day there in his younger years. You will be aware that the City Council has considered this matter previously, and the agreement at the City Council meeting on Wednesday, the 30th of January, was, quote, to support the erection of a suitable monument to Brian Epstein. That motion was resolved. Councillor Simon has discussed this with me, Johnson, and as a result, I, Johnson, am supportive of the statue being placed at or in the vicinity of your hotel, subject to the necessary authorities such as planning commission, which we received, and discussions with the Epstein family, one I'm glad to say I'm in very good terms with. I wish you well with the proposal. Yours sincerely, Joe Anderson. Unfortunately, since we received this letter, we have received zero help or assistance with the statute, as I've never been afforded even a telephone call with Johnson or Councillor Lee Simon for that matter. My correspondence is also being ignored by Cabinet Member and our board. Last month, I told you we asked for 1 month gap. Not alone was it not considered, we didn't get a reply to the letter. In fact, a public servant, Mark Kids, wrote on the judge's behalf, which I thought was totally inappropriate, and I phoned at a meeting. And he confirmed in front of Andrew Harrison, the club stadium operations director or whatever he is, Mr. Kids, told me he was perfectly correct, not replying. I find that inappropriate. And the last thing I'd say is that blocking Anfield Road, one of the things that will be there will be 8 luxury apartments. Now, I wouldn't want Mr. Roberts and Bob and Eileen Roberts, 87 years of age, 33 Dover Road, who suffered for the last 19 years in their street, which used to be not just fully occupied, but fully over-occupied, and has been deliberately and scandalously utilized by the club and your housing, and unfortunately allowed to do so by the council. I wouldn't want people to be apartments be built onto the property, which is now the public highway, looking onto the famous school, which is sitting in the road along. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Those?
This is quite a long statement, I think considerably longer than I would normally expect to make it. But in view of the small number of objectives and the importance of the application, I'd be grateful if I'm allowed to give the whole of it. I'll try to speak quickly. It does include what is actually a more personal component than I normally would include as well. About 10 years ago, perhaps a little more now, I attended an all-day meeting in a building in Walton. The purpose of the meeting was to hear the views of members of the public regarding the proposal to build a new stadium for Liverpool Football Club in Stanley Park. There were almost full of people. Some local councillors were present, perhaps more than the component of the planning committee were here today. Many of those present, including myself, voiced their concerns about the proposed development. Soon after this, the planning committee approved application number 03F3214, which was the number for that application. As everyone here knows, the stadium was not built in the park, although a lot of preparatory work for it was actually carried out. I now see from the papers for today's meeting that that application is still extant. I strongly agree with the Anfield Regeneration Action Committee, whose views are represented in the agenda papers, that that application should be rescinded. Just in case you know what might happen. Sometime before the meeting in Walton, I led a group of 28 people on a guided walk from part of Anfield and Thursday, with the aim of showing people, most of them were from South Liverpool, what interesting areas these were. We started at Holy Trinity Breck Road and proceeded along Anfield Road and ultimately into Kirkdale. As I expected, many of the group were exclaiming in astonishment at what they saw. The variety of Victorian housing, the churches, the schools, the park and its trees, and the views towards Lancashire. Well, my walking days are over, but if I were to do the same walk now, I'd be looking at a great many extremely depressing changes and losses. A lifestyle changes. The preparations for the stadium in the park involves the demolition of several fine Victorian villas on the edge of the park and of a perfectly serviceable sports centre of no great age. It's only about 15 years old at that. Perhaps worst of all, it involved the hacking down of the beautiful avenue of black poplars. Shortly after that meeting in Walton, the highly respected painter Frank Williams, I see is here today, who's particularly well known. He's an Anfield resident and has known Anfield all of his life, and is particularly well known for his paintings of Liverpool. He organised in the park a painting day, so there should be some fine paintings which show the park as it then was, and part of the park as it was before all the damage was done. Anyway, the whole project lapsed, and we waited to see what would happen next, and here we are. Even someone like me, with not the slightest interest in any sport, understands the importance of football to the economy of Liverpool. I'm not stupid enough to imagine anything I can say today will affect the outcome of this meeting in the slightest way, but I still feel that I have to say it. I've tried to address a number of facts arising from the application itself, but a rather more personal matter, which has given me some great sadness. Wandering around the north side of Liverpool, I became aware of how dominant both of the football stadiums were, particularly in Anfield. It looms up as a rather strange shape on the horizon from many directions, but this is nothing compared with what it's going to look like when the new version's built. It will be enormously taller and enormously wider than it is at present. It will dominate the whole area, affecting views in and from Stanley Park itself. The back of the development will have the effect of a gigantic wall, as far as I can see, giving the surviving neighbouring houses unpleasant vistas and casting an enormous shadow, surely, over neighbouring houses. What's left of Anfield Road and part of Stanley Park. It appears that Anfield Road, well, I've seen this myself, always along the thoroughfare is to be chopped into segments, with the stadium encroaching well across Anfield and into the park. Presumably drivers who are not going to matches will be expected to take inconvenient detours, and yes, of course, that will distract from the hotels and other things in both parts of the road. What's more, it appears that the outer areas of the stadium are going to encroach on the park itself, probably incurring further demolitions and certainly necessitating loss of green space and further loss of trees. Apparently we are asked to believe that this doesn't really matter because this is not in the landscape part of the park, but it does matter. I agree with the Anfield Regeneration Action Committee that the applicants and others have belittled the contribution of the eastern end of Stanley Park to its overall setting. This section of the park, as we pointed out before, serves a different purpose from the landscape part. This is the informal part of the park where people can walk dogs, play games, kick balls around, do whatever they want. I seem to remember making that point over 10 years ago. Then the issue of trees. Evidently, further trees are to be lost from the area of the park around Mill Lane, apparently to facilitate access to and from the stadium. There seems to be no information regarding the number of these trees, or precise number, or their species. In compensation, however, we have a description of a linear grove to be erected along what was part of Barroy Road until quite recently people's homes. This site is to become a series of terraced lawns, tree planting and cluster seating to act as an informal urban park, and this will quote it from what it says
the agenda report. A green buffer between the retained properties and the extended stadium. Is this for the benefit of the remaining local residents, visitors, or both? Within the northern boundary of the application site, there are going to be a number of native parkland trees, it says, in order to help extend the character of Stanley Park into the south. There are apparently to be a number of tree species which will reflect the character of the new design, how it's not explained, and also to provide reference to the club's colours. Well, I think native species were referred to before. I don't know any bright red native species, but anyway, there were maybe at last, I come to the lot of terraced houses, past and possibly future. A few years ago, English Heritage produced a series of small books on different aspects of Liverpool's architecture. One of these, and I meant to bring it today, and I remember what happens at the title of it. One of these concerned the remarkable range of terraced housing in what was referred to as Brentfield. I think that referred to the ward rather than the district. Most of them, almost all of them, were in Anfield. Houses large and small, with different designs of doors and windows, different ways of using brick, terracotta moulding, string horses, chimney stacks, everything in fact. It was just as well that English Heritage drew attention to them when it did, because a great many of them have gone. It started, of course, with the wretched HMRI Pathfinder scheme, which destroyed whole communities and their homes. In Anfield, Anfield suffered very much worse than anywhere else. In Liverpool, Liverpool suffered much worse than anywhere else where the Pathfinder scheme was implemented. In Anfield, not only were communities and their homes destroyed, but the ancient field boundaries, including those of the fields which gave the district its name, were clearly discernible in the layout of the Victoria streets. You can see that very clearly by looking at maps of I was going to say present-day houses, but what were the present-day streets until a few years ago, and looking at maps which show the field boundaries. Most of this was swept away, and the last time I looked, because I don't look anymore, many of the cleared sites were still cleared. I say last time I looked because I can no longer bear to look at what's left of the area, although I do sometimes pass through it on the 17 bus. I actually close my eyes until I know through it. Of all the Liverpool Pathfinder areas, Anfield was condemned to lose the largest number of traditional houses, over 2,000 people. According to the Anfield Regeneration Action Committee, again I'm looking at the report for today, this number has been demolished and hundreds more are scheduled for the chop. Well, I knew that Gilman Street, Tinsley Street and Lake Street had all gone. I'd seen that when I was able to open my eyes when I was on the bus. I now see that that's in some way connected with the stadium application. I had assumed it was to do with the Pathfinder scheme. Until quite recently, however, I thought the rectangle of streets bounded by Anfield, Tancred, Blackrock Field, and Worthing roads were safe. This coherent little group of roads was originally condemned by the Pathfinder scheme, but a strong residents group put up a valiant fight, and I assume that this was why these roads were left unscathed. Not anymore, however. The whole of Lothian Street, one side of Alroy Street, and a small number of houses at that end of Rockfield Road are within the boundaries of the new stadium. And it's, of course, its outer areas. I grew up in Wakefield, that until 4 years before I was born, my family lived at 57 Rockfield Road. They've lived there for 12 years. Although I never lived there myself, I liked looking at the house. It was a sturdy 3-storey house, with in fact a basement area as well. It's mentioned somewhere in the report that there were 3-storey houses in some of the neighbouring streets. It doesn't mention Rockfield, there were a few there. I used to go and see it on my many visits to Anfield. I liked imagining my family's life there. My parents, much younger than I ever knew them. My father, flying homemade kites with my brother in Stanley Park when my big brother was a little boy. My brother walking to Anfield Road Primary School where he started his school life. My older sister in Capran. My father teaching himself to make furniture in the cellar of 57 Rockfield Road. My grandmother, who I never saw, was named how we lived there. When I looked at the plan at the back of today's agenda papers, I saw that only a very small number of houses in Rockfield Road all fit into the new stadium. 9 houses on one side, 6 on the other. If you look at that plan, you'll see that number 57 is, or rather was, the second one in the shorter group, second mile of the road. I say it was because I had no doubt that demolition had already taken place from what was implied in the agenda papers. It was confirmed to me by Frank earlier today. The word heritage appears a number of times in the papers for today's meeting. In fact, it's bandied about all over the place these days. It tends to be used to refer to listed buildings, conservation areas, national parks, etc. And these are indeed very, very important components of our heritage. But whenever I visit the Records Office, almost every microfilm and microfiche reader and computer is occupied by people totally absorbed by research into their family's history, including places where their relatives lived and worked. I don't think many of these were mansions, unless they were working as servants, or semi-detached houses, or substantial villas. They usually were terraced houses or semi-detached houses. To people doing this kind of research, the discovery that their great-grandparents ran a corner shop is hugely exciting, especially if that corner shop still exists, even if it's got a new use. The family research, computer programs bear witness to the importance of these quests today, as does the popularity of the televisions. What do you think you are? Whereas I gather a lot of celebrities have discovered that their ancestors lived in very humble homes. Heritage includes memories and associations, often associated with terraced streets and other non-listable features and environment. Yet many of these have been and will be swept away as if they are of no account. The damage already done to my heritage, and the heritage of some other people here, perhaps of everybody, is irreparable. Let's hope that at least it proves on this occasion to have been sacrificed to some purpose and not just totally wasted. Oh, well, I did say what seems like a long time ago now, but I was not stupid enough to suppose that anything I could say here today would make a scrap of difference to the outcome. As well, no radio presenter used to say at the end of his programme, if you have them, thank you for listening.
Thanks, Gordon. That's good. What's the question, sir? Gordon, Steve wants to ask you a question.
Just talking aloud, as one of the people who fought alongside you to try and save Stanley Park, isn't it really the dilemma today?
Hang on a minute. Gordon, so if you put your mic on, you cut Steve off. So just stand down a minute so he finishes.
I really want to cut off. Isn't the dilemma that in campaigning to save Stanley Park, which I'm so glad you did, that the alternative was always going to be an expansion of the football of its current site. And whilst there's no ideal solution, this was probably the best alternative we could hope for. And some of the houses you're referring to demolished, we always said would become car park. Now we're seeing that happen, but where we're at now, is this not the best way forward, rather than have us go back to building on the park itself? That's the dilemma, I think, for those of us just talking about, ask the question. For those of us who have the dilemma of, and privilege and courage to fight the original proposals, this was going to be probably one of the options that come forward instead. And in that case, it's the least worst option.
Well, you put your mic on that.
Yes, I agree that I suppose it is a much better solution than building on the park itself. I've no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean that I'm particularly happy about it, obviously. I I suppose I must have realised that eventually they'd find another way of improving the facilities in the other stadium. I don't suppose anything prepared me for how enormous it is and in exactly what way it would affect the surrounding area. My design sense is not good enough to prepare me for that. But yes, it is a better option than building inside the park.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Michael, come please.
Apologies already, and I apologise to you in advance because I've broken the front tooth with this being really badly. So I should try my very best to talk about. For those that don't know, we might be one or two. My name is Michael, and I'm one of the residents whose life has been blighted by the applicant for so many years. I'm also secretary of the Anfield Generation Action Committee. The applicant makes a number of admissions in the application. They admit there will be an 80% increase in height from 27 to 45 metres, which will tower over the area. Yet the UDP states it will not grant permission for development adjacent to a historic park, which will be out of character with the rest of the area. The applicant admits the enlarged stand will have a negative impact on views into Narrative Stanley Park. They also admit the expansion will reduce the amount of sunlight over Rockfield as far as Coningsby Road. I did ask for the committee to fully investigate this part of the application to ensure that residents don't lose sunlight before permission granted. The applicant admits that the residents, particularly along Benmore Street and Robson Street, will suffer increased levels of noise, disturbance and drug and antisocial behaviour. The television reception is bad at the moment as well. But it's not just the TV, it's impossible to obtain both mobile phone reception and internet access on match days. If it's like this now, what's it going to be like in a large stadium? The applicant admits it intends to remove historic trees adjacent to the lane merely for access purposes. And I have to say the park has lost over 1,000 trees already, and I urge the committee to refuse to allow any further tree removal. The applicant also admits the proposal will greatly increase both noise levels and light glare and will have negative impact on the residential community. And of course, they also admit their proposal will bring many thousands more fans into our residential area. Yet, strangely enough, it will not bring in a single extra car. Rubbish. The applicant knows that any increase in massive congestion is a material consideration, and so it is engineered the myth that match day congestion is decreasing and will continue to reduce as thousands more fans flood into the area. This is a fairy tale worthy of Hans Christian Andersen. It must be stressed in the strongest of terms that Anfield is a residential area. It's not a business estate of Liverpool Football Club. Yet from beginning to end, the application document is one concerted attack after another on the residential community of those living within the shadow of the stadium. It freely admits all these things, but then goes on to say because they are so wonderful for the city, it should be allowed to further impact the lives of the residents. They honestly believe they can act in any manner they choose without impunity, but this committee doesn't have to accept what the applicants say at face value. You have the opportunity to lay down your own conditions to protect the residents' community. You have the power to force the applicants to become better neighbours with the people who live their daily lives in and around Anfield. And you also have the opportunity to hold them to account for any breaches to their planning consent. And I accept it's a difficult decision you have to make, and Liverpool Football are important to the city, but so are the people. And this should be mutually beneficial to both club and residents. It's called compromise. Unfortunately, the applicant is only interested in getting what it wants at our expense. To be fair, we are delighted the applicants have decided not to move to Stanley Park yet. and we congratulate the new owners for a greater level of open transparency. That said, I'm afraid to say the application document contains many half-truths, untruths, and downright lies. For example, the applicant maintains the residents of the application site have been extensively consulted. This is simply not true. According to the applicant, the proposal before you is the culmination of extensive consultation over initiatives contained in the Anfield Spatial Regeneration Framework and was first unleashed on the public in a document called the Anfield Project. The only problem is the Anfield Project was only delivered within the application area after the alleged extensive consultation took place. As such, the residents were never able to take an active role in the consultation process, yet visitors to the area whose lives would not be affected by the application were consulted. Clearly this was done to dilute the level of objections in favour of the applicant. Most transparency with one hand, stay no lies and deceit with the other. With reference to the local housing market, the applicant states that properties around the stadium could suffer from lower housing demand leading to a spiral of dereliction, abandonment and decay. I have to say this is an outrageous untruth because the applicant themselves are responsible for the stadium and its decline of the housing market around the stadium. It wasn't that no one wanted to live there, the houses were never available to let or buy, they were simply boarded up and left. This flagrant attempt to rewrite history should not and will not be tolerated. The applicant knows it's a lie, the council knows it's a lie, and the resident knows it's a lie. The application is clearly contrary to the development plan policies the applicant has sought to bring in extraneous matters to support its plans. It is not permissible by law to use alleged uncertain and unrelated possible wider regenerative benefits to seek to pay for permission for a development which will clearly cause such considerable harm to the locality and the residential community. Now the council has a moral as well as a legal duty to both maintain and enhance the residential community. I'll just say that once more and think about the committee. The council has a moral and legal duty to maintain and enhance the residential community. Policy C7 and H4 are there to safeguard both the residential community and the character of the area. Each of the applicant's admissions is a material consideration against granting permission. If this application is granted in its entirety, there is no question our residential community will be seriously diminished. So on behalf of the local residents, I am asking the committee to use their delegated powers to protect our community. Please reject this application in line with policies C7 and H4. If you can't or won't do that, I would ask that you at least scale back the attack on the residential community. Put conditions in place, allow the residents to enjoy the same quality of life as other residents across the city. I'm almost finished now, but I would just like to finish with a supplementary question. So I've been trying to answer for 4 years now. Also over there. On the 11th of April 2006, this committee granted listed buildings consent to the applicant to dismantle the monkey house structure on Friday Road, carry out cleaning and repair works, and re-erect the structure on the Walton Lane side of the park. Also, to dismantle the bowling green pavilion and re-erect it adjacent to the children's playground. The structures were duly removed in accordance with the consent, and that was the last we ever saw of them. These listed structures are important historical elements of our park, and the applicant has no right to remove them and discard them, because that's not what the consent was for. This is the committee's opportunity to show the applicant that it does have some teeth. Paragraph 5 on page 3, and I've got copies for the committee. Paragraph 5 on page 3 of this committee's own document states that non-compliance with the conditions of the consent is a criminal offence. So the question I want to ask you is, the fact that the applicant has not complied, have they committed a criminal offence? And if so, they should be prosecuted under the law. Thank you very much. Here is documents, the listed documents for the committee.
Jay, if I may.
You ask a question?
Yeah, please. Mike, have you and other objectors actually had an opportunity to view that document?
No.
No, no, right. On page 118, it suggests that 58.65% of users going to the grounds at weekends travel by car. What would you as a local resident view the impact of 8,000 additional users, of which 58.65% would travel by car?
Well, I think
Well, you'd have one as well, because I live near the ground users.
Well, you're not on the stand at the moment.
No, I'm not that, I'm just saying,
I mean, what is it?
you know where I live,
No, it is pertinent, because I would feel quite happy if that document shared members is a very positive thing, but also certain things that the reports don't actually illustrate. So if we're having 8,000 extra seats, and we recognise on a weekday 63% travel by car, and 58.65% travel by car on weekend, if we believe those trends are comparable, then it makes the question, what is the carbon impact of 8,000 odd extra seats?
Well, I don't think the area can cope with what they've got at the moment, and I think an extra 8,000 people coming in, it's going to be many more cars. And because they don't seem to understand, they don't seem to get it, and the applicant doesn't seem to get it. It's cheaper. It's cheaper for visitors to go into a car and park in the adjacent streets and take a resident's place than to pay the fine than to half an hour or half an hour. You just seem to understand. I mean, namely, I actually witnessed residents getting ticketed even when they were displayed, a badge display. I've seen them getting ticketed because you've been told it's not prominently enough displayed, and yet I've seen cars without visitors' cars not getting ticketed. And I have no rational explanation of this except they haven't. And it shouldn't be allowed. We do desperately need some respite. The applicant is, they're very confident saying this is only going to be 28 times a year, but it's not. They're going to have more things going on there, and it's going to be regular every week. It's not just going to be 28 times a week. And we also don't forget that we also have Everton on prices, but it does affect us as well. Not as much as Liverpool, but it does affect us. So we've got double the amount of cars coming this year. Yeah.
okay.
I think it's material consideration. Thank you.
Black Green, people down flag.
We're describing the shop in Everton to Anfield for 41 years, back in 1973. I took a shop on Redrow Road. 1978 moved to Anfield, which was the shops on Redrow Road that made demolished. Massive clearance scheme. I spent all my adult life painting pictures of Liverpool. I was a great fan of W.G. Herdman, whose house was demolished in second grade. I don't know if anybody here knows of the work of W.G. Herdman. He was the greatest artist who painted pictures of Liverpool until he died in 1882. He produced more pictures of the city of Liverpool. Virtually, I think some of the planning applications on occasions W.G. Herdman's house was demolished in 2011. After I approached, his house was in say we were part of a semi-detached house built in 1855. I approached Liverpool City Council. First of all, I approached English Heritage because I was worried that if Liverpool City Council, because of the clearance of the 2,000 houses and everything, found out that W.G. Herman's house was in second and overgrown, then it would be demolished publicly. So I didn't trust the council. And I approached English Heritage and they sent two people down, they got keys to the house, pointing. I wanted it turned because Anfield was supposed to, Everton was supposed to be being regenerated. I wanted this to be a hub for some of this regeneration. The works of Birmingham, the Birmingham exhibition, and the gallery for visitors, which really attracted people. Anyway, English Heritage decided once again that there's been like one time they didn't think it was wrong that Stanley Park should go to a football club. So English Heritage rejected what I wanted. I did approach some of the councillors, not going to name it wasn't your work, but I approached some of the local councillors. They never heard of them. How many of you councillors here heard of the Anyway, his house was demolished, so a fantastic opportunity wasted. Then was very instrumental. He painted right through the period of major developments in Liverpool, when the Irish family and the huge influx of people from Wales and else. But Anfield has spent most of my life actually coming to near my shop since 1945 and 47. And I know the area very well. I couldn't believe it when eventually I followed that. I've known Mike and a lot of people, friends of Stanley Park for a long time. I couldn't believe it when Liverpool's application to build Stanley Park came up. And I joined the friends of Stanley Park probably about 10 to 12 years ago. The statement that was supposed to be on Stanley Park was presented by Rick Paddy and the leader of the chief executive of the Liverpool Council, David Mitchell, at a meeting in Anfield Road School, Penn Street School. Meeting. Huh? But at that meeting, the people at Anfield actually were stickers. The majority of being cleared out and they've gone as part of that 2000 Pathways Initiative thing, which was that thing to demolish these 2,000 houses was passed out of forum at that committee meeting. I know that, and probably John knows some of the people who were involved with it. But it was passed without a quorum. It should never have been passed. This is how it is now, all gone. But the main thing about Stanley Park anyway is that they, at the Liverpool's football ground now, the present stadium takes up nearly 30,000 square metres. In Stanley Park, when the planning committee went down in the late building the Peter and Reed, who later became the Czar of Liverpool, came up to me, pardon? Oh, the Czar as well. I never said that. The Czar of Liverpool, he came up to me, and I wasn't around the surprise of and I said, look here, and I said, that field, the big field in Stanley Park, there are hundreds and hundreds of children playing that field. The park belongs to them, it doesn't belong to councillors, it doesn't belong to the football club, and it doesn't belong to you to give away. He said there will be no loss of green public open space if Liverpool move into Stanley Park. He said because the old stadium will be demolished, it's only 30,000 square metres, and only some of the plans for Liverpool football club new stadium in Stanley Park. It took up a total area of about 90,000 square metres. In addition to that, the lies that were told were that the Liverpool stadium, particularly the area of Liverpool's present stadiums, that was going to be, the stadium was going to be demolished, and that was going to be put back to green public open space. So in fact, they already had plans to build on 26,000 square metres of that space, so the public were being short-changed again. Since then, the application started, the finances made it impossible to build that stadium. So Stanley Park was certainly realised at one time. The wonderful street, which is Scaries Road, absolutely wonderful houses which were renovated. They were owned by Liverpool Football Club. Liverpool Football Club actually boarded them up as they became empty. Took the banisters out, took all the plumbing out. They gave them totally done. And there was an exhibition hosted at the Liverpool Club in the church, in which there were photographs of Scaries Road saying, these streets are not fit for the 21st century. They have no off-street parking and they have no gardens. Well, so what? You went next to a great 2-star listed park there. So people didn't need gardens. The streets were then suddenly, when Liverpool Football Club were told they could move to Stanley Park, that street was suddenly miraculously resurrected and renovated, and the houses were already 30,000. Now, many of the houses in Tanker Road and the houses off Rockfield Road have been left to become better. They were burnt out. Tanker Road had one man fighting the vandals by himself. He had no support from the council or fire brigade, anywhere else, the police. In the end, he left, and so was Anfield John, £15,000 the council house. Next to nothing. Those houses, totally dead, being renovated, says. The house in Granton Road, presumably going to that close, the house in Granton Road, and all the houses coming down the hill, which have probably been the field patterns, many of them have been renovated to a very, very high level, but they were sacrificed again, and I believe they were sacrificed, the whole area has been sacrificed because of this book. Some of the things which we're not being told in any of these documents, sort of hinted at. What is the opportunities that are going to take place in the car park, the so-called car park in Stanley Park, which is a hard area which used to be used for the young people of the city for football, and before they used to play regularly on those flooded, hard standing areas. So what's this commercial opportunity for Stanley Park? What's the commercial opportunities for the high street and all this, or is what we reckon the high street? What are the commercial opportunities? Somebody should tell us, because I've been in business for 42 years, seen so many businesses go to the wall over there, and the businesses which haven't gone to the wall, very often being local businesses, have been bought out by the council. So the question is still to be answered about the next thing that's going on, the next plan of obligation that's going on. For the finish anyway, just to say that when I went to the planning meeting, when the park was granted to the football club, it was in Cherry Lane, Walton. The chairman of the planning committee was Councillor David Erdo. He stood at the beginning of that meeting, 15 minutes before the planning meeting started. We went into that building, and we were getting these, it was 350-page booklets to read. The planning meeting started 15 minutes later. It was impossible. Then what he said, I was given this document a week ago. He said, it's taken me every night trying to digest the contents, and he obviously admitted that he couldn't digest the contents. But at the end of the planning application, and John will tell you, there were some magnificent speeches from the people around, absolutely articulate, brilliant speeches, similar to the speech you heard today. But what he said is, at the end of it, he questioned the councils. And I must ask, is there a quorum here for this? The councils here on this committee?
Committee is indeed closed.
But he actually said that after all these magnificent speeches, in spite of my reservations, I'm going to find this how we favour of the applicants. I hope you councillors don't do that today. I hope you do look at the council being raised. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Anyone want to give comments on what he said?
How brief, can be very brief, or can be brief out? First of all, Chair, I'd just like to say a few general housekeeping rules.
Members, you will have seen a supplementary agenda which has been put in front of you this morning. There's changes to a number of conditions. Some elements of conditions have been moved to other conditions. There is a degree of numbering, and there's also the removal of one condition relating to counter-terrorism secured by design measures following comments received from the Northwest Counter-Terrorism Unit. The objection letter that Anfield Regeneration Action Committee made in relation to the application, the original objection letter, which is summarised as all comments are within pages 19 to 32 of the report, is missing 2 pages. That full objection letter is attached to this agenda, Chair. There's a number of additional conditions to be attached to the recommendation, which relate to environmental health issues that have been brought to our attention and will be attached to the recommendation. Chair, there's a couple of issues I'd like to start with. First of all, there's been a number of concerns raised about the lack of consultation in relation to people notified of the application, or the lack of information council operatives produced the document and asked if any residents see this. The 6,800 residents were notified of this application in the area bounded by Walton Lane, Robson Street, Priory Road and Breck Road. Approximately 35 to 40 site notices were put up on slightly further afield. All the documents in relation to this application are available online for all members of the general public to view. And a copy, equally so, the club provided copies on CD of all the documents, and they were passed in interested parties, amongst which one was the Anfield Neighbourhood Forum. So all those documents are out there to view. I do take on board people's concerns that there's a lot of more weighty documents and there's not much time in which to view them to a certain degree. Okay. Chair, as I previously stated, the main issues to consider in relation to this application are identified on pages 41 to 42 of the report in front of you. They relate to the principles of development, design, layout and visual amenity, the transport issues, the impact on residential amenity, issues relating to heritage and environment, and issues relating to food access. I'll deal with these on a case-by-case basis, and I'll also cross-reference the points that have been raised by the objectives who stood up this morning. In relation to the principle of development, there is no site-specific designations relevant to the principle of development on the football club per se. The site isn't allocated within a designation. Policy C7 offers support in principle to both Everton and Liverpool Football Club in progressing the development proposals. Policy E8, which provides general support for tourism development in the Liverpool area. Equally so, there are a number of development policies within the unitary development plan, which a number of the objectives have raised, that are kind of safeguarding policies. These are policy H4 and residential amenity. It's to ensure that no development that the committee may approve would have any adverse impact on residential amenity. And equally so, there are a number of safeguarding policies to protect the historic environment, including the setting of listed buildings, policy H5 and policy HD15, which relates to historic parks, gardens and cemeteries. I'll quickly try and deal with the relevant issues on a case-by-case basis. In terms of design and the visual impact of the large stadiums, the design quality can be assessed by considering the following elements of scheme, the enlarged stadium and the external landscaping and public ground. The proposal is for 13,500 increased spectators, not 8,000, 13,500 both within the main stand and the Anfield Road stand. I think everyone recognises, members who've been on site today, that the proposals for the main stand are very significant in scale. The existing height of the main stand to the roof is 24 metres. The height of the enlarged main stand would be 45 metres in height, very substantial increase in height. Equally so, the Anfield Road stand currently is 24 metres in height, which would be increased to 39 metres in height. Whilst the height of the stadium is significant in scale, the principle of large stadium set within a tight urban ring of terrace streets is already established. The introduction of the two-storey high podium and the public groundworks which have been outlined previously in the presentation creates a huge level and allows for interaction between the stadium building and public realm, what could be an otherwise inactive frontage. In terms of Anfield Road, the design, which is in outline form, can be focused on establishing the volume, height, and floor plate to accommodate additional 4,500 extra spectators, with matters relating to landscaping and external appearance reserved for future consideration. Given the proximity to Stanley Park and the requirements of policy HD 15, which to safeguard the second of historic parks and cemeteries, any future reserve matters application will need to secure high standards of design and materials appropriate to the historic setting. This is something that will be considered at a later date in any subsequent reserve matters application. And I would state that English Heritage has supported both phases of the proposal, but do recognise the fact in relation to phase 2, additional work is required in terms of the external appearance and the interface with the park and Anfield Cemetery. In relation to the transport strategy, a lot of concern has been raised by local residents, by members of the committee, in relation to the demands of traffic within the locality at the present moment. A lot of physical measures have already been introduced, and these are identified on page 16 of the report. These are physical measures which were required as part of the previously granting planning permission to the new stadium in the park, but have already been introduced. The creation of 17 football marked parking zones shown there's been a marked shift in how supporters travel with less dependence on private car usage. However, I think as all members are aware, private car is still the main choice for supporters, and the rationale behind the current transport strategy is to change supporter travel behaviour to more sustainable modes. And equally so, as part of the text of terms in section 106 agreement, the transport strategy working group is to be set up to ensure that these changes in transport behaviour from more public modes of transport are being met and are identified future intervention measures to enable delivery of the agreed transport strategy. To promote better use of public transport, taxis and boat travel, and to deter future on-street parking or around ground, a number of proposed measures identified which are outlined within condition 24. Comments were made from the Anfield Regeneration Action Committee in relation to problems with football match parking zones, and a number of residents raised these issues also. It is proposed as part of this application to further assess zones 1 to 5 of zones which seem to have a predominance of free on-street car parking, with only half of streets being given over to residential. We are looking actively of making these zones 100% available for residential use. Equally so, following concerns raised in relation to the kind of spillover from existing football parking zones to people who are chosen just to park immediately outside the boundary. It was proposed to create a new parking zone, include the residential areas to the west of Santic, Mingo Road and Hales. The concerns in relation to commercial travel and the comments that they made have already been discussed in depth prior, and I wouldn't like to make any further comments on that. I think the main issue for consideration is the impact that the proposed works have on the residential amenity of the surrounding occupiers. As I say, policy C7, which provides general support for the football clubs, it also requires solutions for amenity match problems for adjacent residential properties, and the support for the club is tempered by the fact that those expansion plans should not adversely affect residential amenity. And as a number of objectives have previously said, policy 84, which relates to primarily residential areas, the main consideration in assessing proposals in primarily residential areas, as is the case here, is that there is no adverse impact on residential amenity or the character of the areas. The report in front of you today identifies a number of potential ways the impact of the living conditions of nearby residents could be impacted during the construction and operational phases. These are summarised as follows. In relation to match day activity, there are a number of residential areas that are likely to experience an increase in general noise and disturbance associated during the construction process, and also in relation to the expanded stadium. Most notably, these are the residents of Alroy Road. Following the demolition properties in Lothair Road and on the east side of Alroy Road, residents of the retained dwelling houses will have direct views and experience of match day activity of their houses. Prior or currently, they are or were sheltered by 1 to 2 story terrace properties. This will no longer be the case. This view of the Monarch Stadium is mitigated by the landscaping of the stadium concourse and the buffer of approximately 45 metres from the front of their properties to the podium edge, softening of the landscaping, the introduction of a dedicated parking place for these residents that they've requested. The other residents who are probably affected most are residents along Robson Street. This is in relation to match day activity. The transport strategy proposes to create a post-match bus pick-up point on Robson Street. Basically, it's a public transport intervention measure to remove dependence on the private car to make people use public transport. However, there will be a degree of nighttime congregation of fans along Robson Street waiting for these buses into the city centre. This impact is significant, but will be lessened by stewarding and management of those crowds as they alight and get on the buses. In terms of noise and vibration, there will be potential impacts during the construction phase in terms of noise and dust arising from construction activities and from road traffic. I think this is brought home to members today when we realise the significance of the works entailed. These works are significant, but they are temporary. They're for a maximum period of